Hi, I'm Dr. Chad Larson. Thanks for joining me in another episode of Keep It Real. So you're catching me in my truck again today. Instead of going for a hike, I'm going for a mountain bike. But I read a couple interesting articles that I wanted to bring to your attention. Um, so as a society, we do a pretty poor job of addressing people with mental health and mental health issues. And that goes for me as well. I haven't covered a whole lot of mental health in this YouTube channel, and so I just wanted to bring one to my attention that I thought was interesting, and the angle that the researchers took on the project I thought was pretty interesting as well. So the condition that they evaluated in this research is bipolar disorder, and bipolar is a condition used to be called manic depressive disorder because people with bipolar are at a higher risk for experiencing symptoms of depression, and sometimes that can flip and they can experience symptoms of mania, which is kind of the opposite of depression, where they have a higher kind of elevated mental state and mental mood in kind of an abnormal way, and oftentimes it affects their sleep, and they have symptoms of insomnia, and in some cases this can go on for weeks and even months, and then there can be kind of an equal drop in their mood and behavior and so forth. So researchers took 1,000 cases of bipolar disorder and they evaluated their diet, and they saw something, an interesting common thread in their diet. And what they found is that people with bipolar disorder, or let's say people who experienced states of mania is what specifically they looked at. States of mania, this kind of elevated, abnormally elevated state in mood, and things that like insomnia and anxiety. They found that when they had this elevated state in these 1,000 subjects that they evaluated, they had a 3.5 greater times consumption of nitrates, or foods that contain nitrates. Foods that contain nitrates are like cured meats, like hot dogs and jerky and that kind of stuff. They're oftentimes have nitrates as a curing agent, as a preservative. And so they looked at lots of other food categories as well, but this came up over and over again in the evaluations that they had. So that was interesting, and that was published in a journal called Molecular Psychiatry. And so that was interesting. But then some researchers took it to the next step, and they created a rodent model to evaluate this. And what they did is they had 3 different sets of subjects. They have one set of subjects that was just the control group, meaning they didn't consume any of the nitrate containing food. And then they had another group of subjects that contained that ate food that contained cured meat with nitrate. So it's just kind of your typical nitrate containing cured meat, like a beef jerky kind of thing. And then they had a group that consumed cured meat that was completely free of nitrates. And they found the same thing. After just a couple weeks of consuming these foods, the animals that had the jerky or the cured meats with the higher, or with levels of nitrates in it, they started to have sleep disturbances. They started to have move and behavior disorders that were very similar to mania in humans. And then the study was duplicated again, and they came up with the same results. The rodents that consumed the chow, or the food that contained nitrates, ended up within a couple weeks' time, they ended up having this kind of mania effect. So there seemed to be a pretty clear connection between nitrates and the increased chance of developing these mania-type symptoms. And bipolar disorder only affects maybe 1 to 3% of the population that are susceptible to this type of mania kind of affect, they call it. But it has a direct health cost of about $25 billion per year. So that's why the researchers really dug into this, because the more pieces of the puzzle that they can put together to help to figure out how to treat people who suffer from this condition, then the better chance that they're going to be able to reduce some of these costs. And where this is, very likely a multi-pronged kind of trigger type condition. In other words, there's multiple factors that are involved in somebody tripping into a state of mania, particularly those who have bipolar. We now know that these nitrates in these cured meats is one thing that we need to consider because, like I said, in that first study, the subjects who had these states of mania, when they evaluated their diet, they had 3.5 times greater occurrence of exposure or consumption of these nitrate containing meats. So that was very interesting. There's, oftentimes misunderstanding, I think, about mental disorders, but I was so happy to see that these researchers looked at diet. If you've been following this, following this show for a while, you have, you're definitely familiar with the idea that we think food is the absolute centerpiece to human health. And we know that foods affect things like the gut microbiome. And now there's understanding of the effects of the gut microbiome on the function of the brain. So as we understand kind of the next step of, okay, why did these nitrates influence the effect of the brain, effect of brain function? And I think, and they're going to study this actually, they kind of concluded in the study that they're going to look kind of at the next step of why is this? Why did nitrates increase the chance of mania in these susceptible individuals? And I think what we're going to find out is these nitrates cause some disruption in the balance of the gut microbiome. And then we know that there's some very important signaling effects between the gut and the brain. And I think we'll find some opportunities, some connections there. So hopefully you found that interesting. Enjoy your nitrate-free jerky, and we'll talk to you next time. Until then, keep it real.